When it comes to generic caster lords, you're going to have a hard time outdoing the Slaans. I mean, mainly the biggest reason why I say caster specifically is they do have greater arcane conduit. They're the only generic caster, I believe, in the game that has access to it in multiplayer, which is absolutely massive. It's a huge buff to damage and everything else that you can do with spells. Magic, of course, being one of the most powerful mechanics and one of the unique things about Total War Warhammer specifically that we all love so much. Today, Galrish coming in hot with a Metal Slaan. He's got some Croc Scores and Skinks, classic Skink Croxy Rush into Dark Elves, a couple of Rev Crystals as well for healing since he went with the Damage Slaan. He's got some Feral Cold Ones and some Rippers up in the sky for some mobile Sky Skirmish. Hydra here, yep, that's a choice, and some Bleak Swords. Old One, Dread Knights, and, yeah, Bleak Swords, more Bleak Swords, Sorcerers of Shadows, so a lot of sort of Militia tier Dark Elf Infantry. Lokir, quite a powerful duelist up in the sky, is going to take a chunk out of those Rippers and should be able to, oh, I said, yeah, Rippers, not Pterodons, no Skirmish, but a bit of, you know, maybe hit and run charges, but certainly don't want to be taking that engagement. They're going to pull on away there. It's a lot of infantry for the Dark Elves, though, backed up by these Dread Knights, so Red Knight's definitely going to have to be used well here to try and counteract the Croc Scores. Here in the center, they get a nice little counter charge. Should be doing some very solid damage there, although they are charging through the back of their own infantry, so it'll be wildly effective, but especially in kind of a grind fight. Of course, Dread Knights have quite good sustained combat stats. In terms of attack and defense, 40, 44 is definitely very solid for elite cavalry. Not incredible, but very good for sure. Gonna see some banishment also being pulled down here, and I don't remember, do these actually get spell mastery applied to them? I believe bound spells do not. Yeah, so you can see the intensity on the tooltip there. It is not on the banishment part, but it is there on the final transmutation just under the spell type, and that does indeed indicates that the bound spells are not subject to spell mastery, which is probably a good thing, to be honest, at the end of the day. But a massive final transmutation going to pop off here, and we'll do huge DPS to all of these units, in particular the Dread Knights, of course. Their red underside of their capes secretly poking through there. They're going to take massive damage. And we've already seen Murderous Prowess pop off as well. A lot of Skink Cohort high model count dying. Of course, a lot of high model count for the Dark Elves also getting killed horribly here. But taking an overall look at the sort of rush versus counter rush, Lokir the caster are able to kind of support on this flank, do some nice DPS, and kind of stabilize some of that Dark Elf Militia Infantry. Of course, the Dark Elves will be trading just fine against the Skinks. It's everything else you got to worry about, which the center definitely did feel. Star Chamber Guardians also for some elite anti-large AP can help hold up against those Dread Knights in the late game. Lokir's definitely going to have to use his breath attacks, try and equalize that if he can, but the Hydra here fighting also. The Hydra, unfortunately, just doesn't work. The unit is functionally broken. Like, I don't know what exactly is broken about it. I think maybe the hitbox of the animations is misaligned, or else I know they didn't enable collision attacks, certainly. But for whatever reason, you can have this Hydra fighting in melee the entire time, and it's probably not going to pay for itself. At best, it's just going to tank some serious damage. So, pro tip, when you're fighting against Dark Elves, you can pretty much just ignore the Hydra and kill everything else, and the Hydra will run away because it has pretty bad leadership. Anyway, yeah, Lokir, though, is a true beast, of course, up in the Black Dragon. Massive stats. Going to be dueling here with the Basilodon, doing some nice damage, and be able to take it out. This Rock Score over on this far side as well, getting swarmed by Dread Knights. All three remaining units, tattered as they are, can form up to form one semi-functional full unit of Dread Knights, which will be able to finish off some weakened targets here, but likewise, Ripperdactyls are also going to be swooping down to finish off those weakened Bleak Swords. Weakened Bleak Swords. That's a good one. I should write that one down in my book of tongue twisters. But anyway, weakened Bleak Swords. Fun. As fun as this banishment that's currently ripping through the Dark Elves, leading to some terror routes. Rev Crystals, of course, carrying terror on their backs. They're going to pull away here, stand on top of the Star Chamber Guardians. The Lizardmen force is starting to get a little bit thin on the ground, starting to have some leadership issues. And Lokir, being the big, scary baddie that he is going to be the final boss of this build for sure. Yeah, the Dread Knights should stay together here. The one kind of peels, which I think is a little bit of a mistake, possibly. You definitely want to keep all three together and, like, continue, you know, hunting these weakened units over on the side. I mean, getting the isolated rippers is not a bad play, but I definitely think, yeah, you would want just to keep all three of those units together, basically. A little breath attack in the rear from the Hydra there basically doesn't do anything if we calculate, yeah, not even 800 value yet, so there you go. But I actually did get a hit there on the Bastildon. We'll see. Maybe fighting against single entities that can actually accrue some value. It just seems like fighting multi-model units, like infantry and stuff. I don't know. I've been very unimpressed with the Hydra's performance of late, but maybe I'll be wrong here. We'll see. Red Knight's gonna come in for a little charge here. Again, it's a valiant attempt, but there's just not enough support nearby. Although it does line up a pretty good breath attack, I guess, for... yeah, really nice breath attack straight into the Star Chamber Guardians. A little Melkos mystifying miasma. So Dark Elves kind of employing all their tools they have left in the toolkit to try and take out those Star Chamber Guardians. They're definitely going to be quite scary. But of course, Rev Crystals can continue healing them, and the longer this game goes on, the more chances they're going to get to heal them, which will inevitably get them close to their healing cap if the damage keeps going in. But let's see here. Dark Elves trying their best to finish off some battered units here, get rid of those Rippers finally. Loki here moving in to do just that. While the rest here, just Red Knights trying to hold with the Hydra, but an Overcast Final Transmutation will probably kill all of these Red Knights and do some massive damage. Actually triggers the Hydra's self-heal. And yeah, doesn't quite kill all the Dread Knights, but does lead to them getting terror routed. And these other Dread Knights over here, not necessarily swooping in to come and help. Yeah, both players kind of just consolidating, so let's fast forward a little bit as they reform their lines. The Hydra is going to do a bit of kiting here, which will allow Lokir and the Dread Knights to siphon off some weakened units. Try and get them isolated wherever they can, but eventually we're going to have to get an engagement between these single entities, and it's currently a 3v2 technically, although the power side you would think would lie with the Dark Elves, Hydra's issues aside. But of course you got plenty of supporting Croc scores and the Star Chamber Guardians as well, who are currently just having a whirlwind of magical emotions, being healed and direct damaged at the same time. But yeah, the Croc scores and the Star Chamber Guardians will be super important. The mass and the anti-large here, be able to hold back the dragon and hold back these cavalry, will be super important. The Hydra also, they're going to have a hard time sort of focusing their attacks. I guess it's technically 3v3 with the Sorceress of Shadows here, but yeah, interesting. See how this final engagement plays out. Balanced power a little bit in Dark Elves' favor because of the big scary dragon. But Lizardmen, they're just going to charge on in, you know. Feel like they have the initiative here. So Slaan's got to be careful not to get too far separated from everything else. But Lokir charges on in. That big Shield of the Old One's active. That is going to mitigate a lot of the charge damage, of course. Not that there was a ton of charge damage, but what little there was definitely gets mitigated quite nicely. That leaves Lokir isolated in the center and suffering leadership penalties despite him having 84 attack and defense. Yeah. Being poisoned as well, so his weapon strength is going to be reduced. But we also get one more Final Transmutation. This is another thing about Slaans, right? The other aspect of that Arcane Conduit is you do get better power regeneration or recharge, which I'm not the biggest proponent of power recharge. Generally, I think it's probably one of the weaker abilities. Like, if you're paying for just power recharge, depends on if your build is focused on playing very fast or if you're planning on grinding it out a little bit, especially with the Lizardmen here, having the double Rev Crystal, you might expect it to be a little bit of a longer game. So, if it was just power recharge, I probably wouldn't take it. But the fact that it's attached to the Spell Mastery, which I always want, Spell Mastery, it does make it quite nice, and it means that the Slaan can output quite a bit of damage here. Check its value at the end. Guessing it's going to be quite good, but Lokir here trying his best. Sea Dragon Mass giving him a power boost, of course, but yeah, just failing to do enough DPS to finish anything off here. The Bastildon's also just like trading 2v1 against the Hydra and the Sorceress. That is one thing about Bastildons. In single entity fights, they don't have quite the same downsides often because of that immunity to flanking. In a 2v1, I mean, it's still bad. You still don't want to fight 2v1, but it's better than something else, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that makes sense at all. But Lokir lands right on the Croc scores. Good target, actually, for him to be able to just get out, right? and get rid of the support as quickly as possible. The other unit does countercharge in and is going to try and get a little bit of a surround on him. That dive was pretty nice, though. That took him, like, right out of the blob. So let's see. Nope, looks like Lokir chooses to turn around and dive straight back into the blob. Oh, there we go. Sorceress of Shadows also is kind of caught away here from being able to support Lokir, which might not seem like much, but her attacks, especially on, like, the Slaan, its armor currently being buffed by pretzels up to 75 and 56 melee defense, but once that drops, she would actually be able to do some damage to him. I mean, 285 weapon strength's really not great, but it's there. It's something. So, anyway. This point looking pretty inevitable that the Dark Elves will finally kick the can, so let's just fast forward to speed their fate as Lokir does make a valiant final stand here, but ultimately, the proc scores, Slaans, combined arms of the Lizardmen, it's too much for him, and he routes Yumeis here as the opponent for Galrush. Very fun battle between two friends of the channel, and yeah, 3,000 damage value, almost 20,000 damage dealt on the Metal Slaan at the end. Absolutely fantastic. Then you've got the healing from the Rev Crystals, which actually both do manage to about pay for themselves in terms of damage, which you almost never see with just plain Rev Crystals. That's pretty impressive, actually. Rippers also get some pretty nice value. Croc scores contribute well, as do the Feral Cold ones. Don't quite pay for themselves, but pretty close. The Star Chamber Guardians are also a nice kind of elite anti-large pick to have here, as long as they don't get nuked too hard, which I did eat a couple of breath attacks there, but it wasn't quite enough to do them in. Lokir also got a lot of damage, technically more raw damage, and 21,000 damage dealt, with a little bit less value overall, given the Lizardmen's higher unit count here. Oh, very cost-effective for the Supreme Source of Shadows as well. She's probably right around 1,000 cost. And the Hydra actually ended up eating my words. It does pay for itself. I think this might be the first time in Warhammer 3 that I've seen a Hydra pay for itself. So, you know, clap. Everyone clap for the Hydra. Bleak Swords also, I mean, hard to argue, really. The Dark Elf Militia tier units are generally pretty cost-effective, although this is a lot of them. Maybe you'd want a little bit of armor-piercing missiles. It'd be tough to protect, certainly, against, like, that's what the Ripper's for, right? Is to drop down and, like, nuke a Shade or Dark Shards, but still, overall, the Dread Knights are an interesting choice. They can be good in this matchup, but I think this particular battle, they just kind of struggled a little bit. Would have been better to have something else. Obviously, in hindsight, it's easy for me to say that, but big thanks for both these players for playing. Thanks to all of you for watching. We will, see you next time. Be sure to subscribe and all that stuff.